yet, folks. I'll call you forward when the time comes. I love that you guys are here, even in vacation time. It's pretty nice.
Yes, you do.
Sometimes that helps. Sometimes that helps. I'm going to leave the extra candles as a just in case. For those who might benefit. You have extra candles as a just in case. Right back here. And there's extra good real estate over here. We got like lots of Chanukiot over here. I want to make sure that we don't have anybody burning their hands. Shabbat Shalom, those who are joining us via live stream. We're just getting our Chanukiot set up on the front tables so that you can enjoy the beautiful light that will be surrounding us on this Shabbat of Hanukkah. We'll be beginning in just a moment. Oh, there we go. We're relocating. I like it.
We are relocating. You up on your suggestion. Pardon. Sorry about that.
Spelled? Easy spell. That's sure. Done. You got it. Absolutely. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai lai ya la 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 la. Yai lai 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 lai. Ya la la ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la la ya la 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 la. Ya la la ya la la la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la la ya la la ya la. A teaching from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He taught that the Chassid once asked, Rebbe, what is a Jew's task in this world? The Rebbe answered, a Jew is a lamplighter on the streets of the world. In olden days, there was a person in every town who would light the gas street lamps with a light that he carried at the end of a long pole. On the street corners, the lamps were there in readiness, waiting to be lit. A lamplighter has a pole with a flame supplied by the town. He knows that the fire is not his own, and he goes around lighting all the lamps on his route. The Chassid asked, but What if the lamp is in a desolate wilderness? The Rebbe answered, well, then too, one has to light it. Let it be noted that there is a wilderness, and let the wilderness feel ashamed before the light. But what if the lamp is in the midst of a sea? He asked. Then one must take off one's clothing, jump into the water, and light it right then and there. That is a Jew's mission. And the Rebbe thought for a long moment, and he said, yeah, that is a Jew's calling. And the Chassid continued, Rebbe, I see no lamps. The Rebbe answered, that is because you are not yet a lamplighter. And the Chassid asked, well, how does one become a lamplighter? The Rebbe replied, one must begin with oneself, cleansing oneself, becoming more refined, and then one sees the other as a source of light. A source of light waiting to be ignited, each person. When, heaven forbid, one is crude, then one sees only crudeness. When one is noble, one sees nobility. Well, today, the lamps are there, but they need to be lit. It is written that the soul of the human is a lamp of God. It is also written that a mitzvah is a lamp, and the Torah is a light. A Jew is one who puts all of their personal business and affairs aside and goes around lighting up the souls of others with the light of Torah, the light of mitzvot. Jewish souls are in readiness to be lit. Sometimes they're around the corner, sometimes they're in a wilderness or in a sea. But there must be someone who disregards personal comforts or conveniences, just goes out to put a light to these lamps, to ignite these souls. That is our true calling as Jews, to be lamplighters, igniters of souls. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa nisim lavoteinu bayamim hahem b'hazman hazeh. Nobody here who is not yet a lamplighter. I want to invite you to come forward. Even if you didn't bring a Chanukiah, we have extras, including that big giant one that belongs to the temple. So, having made the brachot, let us fill this room with Hanukkah light. Oh, hear my prayer, I sing to you. Be gracious to the ones I love, and bless them with goodness and mercy and peace. Oh, hear my prayer to Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen. Go ahead and kindle up all those lights. When you finish kindling your Chanukiot, you can return to your seat in the congregation and feast your eyes on the beauty of all this Hanukkah light. Oh, hear my prayer, I sing to you. Be gracious to the ones I love, and bless them with goodness and mercy and peace. Oh, hear my prayer to you. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen. I see one stray Chanukiah still looking for light here on the end. So if you're still up here, you can go ahead and kindle those lights. I want to invite you just to take a quiet moment before we launch into our Kabbalat Shabbat prayers. to take a look at all of this light. This afternoon, I sent a message out to the congregation, some of you may have had a chance to see, in which we talked about light being one of those rare gifts, those things like light and love, things that we can give away, and in so doing, they actually become greater, not diminished. We are conditioned to think of a consciousness of scarcity, that if I give away, I am giving away that which needs to be mine, and I become less by having less. Light reminds us that that's not actually the way it works with the most important things in our lives. Here, each of us has taken just a single match to a candle, kindled a shamash, and then expanded light. By giving light, we have extended light. And now, by doing so in community, we have created this wondrous garland of light that will surround us and will fill not only our eyes, but our spirits as we celebrate this Shabbat. It is the most beautiful setting for welcoming the Sabbath bride into our midst. And if you'll turn to pages 20 and 21 in the prayer book, you'll find the words for Lecha Dodi, the words left to us about 500 years ago by the Kabbalists in Tzvat in the northern part of Israel. They were the ones who taught that Shabbat and the Jewish people were to be like a cosmic wedding on a weekly basis, such that we would feel that kind of anticipation and joy, all that hope for tomorrow. Light is supposed to kindle that in us as well. And so as we are filled with the beauty of this light, let us also welcome the bride Sabbath into our midst. The words are on pages 20 and 21. We'll sing the first and second verses, and then on page 21, the top and bottom verses. So verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. This is a melody that we've only sung a couple of times here before for Lecha Dodi, but you'll be able to pick it up pretty quickly. It goes like this. Lecha Dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. You got it? We'll try it together, every single voice. Lecha Dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad Yishme'anu el ha'meyuchad Adonai echad u'shmo echad V'shemu tiferet v'li tehila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcham ki hi mekor habracha מראש מקדם נסוכה סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה pene Shabbat nekabela. Top of 21. Hitoreri, hitoreri, ki vahore kumi ori, uri uri shir daberi, kevod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה, פני שבת מקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת מקבלה. If you're able, please rise and face the entrance into our Beit Midrash and see in your soul's eye Sabbath the bride arriving. Boi v'shalom ateret bala gam b'simcha u'v'tzola toch emunei am sekula boi chala lecha dodi לקראת כלה פני שבת מקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת מקבלה. Nice singing, everybody. Now stay right where you are. You look great. No. We're on page 28. Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la la la, ya la la la. We're accustomed after Baruch Hu to sharing the words of prayer for the noticing of the light and the darkness and the rotating of the seasons and the rotating of the planets, and all of this is to awaken our senses, our sensibilities to all of the riches in the world and the ways in which we come alive with an awareness of those gifts. Oftentimes it's taking place and we're not paying attention. The prayer book is attempting to open our eyes so that we will in fact take notice. We're gathering, of course, at the very darkest Shabbat of the year. Wednesday, 2 days ago, was the winter solstice. And so we've just begun to turn the corner toward light returning. And as our Chanukiot are growing in light, so too is the world growing in light, especially when we commit to being the ones filling the world with light. And so let's join together in speaking these words at the top of page 31. I invite you to join with me. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim, page 34. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Vahed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Vahed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך. ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. So in a moment we're going to be praying Micha Mocha, which you can find in the prayer book on page 40. But, the story of Micha Mocha is this incredible miracle took place. And we know that Hanukkah, of course, is a celebration of incredible miracles taking place. We're trying to wrap our minds around how that takes place, what our role is in that, what God's role is in that. If you've never taken notice of this before, for the Hebraicists among us, I thought I'd print this little diagram out for you. This is Micha Mocha, the first 4 words of Micha Mocha, laid out just one word at a time. Mi Chamocha Ba'elim Adonai. Micha Mocha is one of the very few prayers that comes straight out of the Torah, actually. It comes out of Shirat Hayam, so right out of the heart of the book of Exodus, the second of the 5 books of Moses. Here are the Hebrew words, Mi Chamocha Ba'elim Adonai. So, I'm now going to lean into counting on our Hebraicists. So, our religious school students, God bless you, you know this. Emmy's here with us. She's like a recent bat mitzvah, just completed bat mitzvah just a couple of weeks ago. She knows this stuff. So, the first letter in each of these first 4 words. First letter is? Very good. First letter of the second word is? Chaf. Very good. First letter of the third word is? First letter of the fourth word is Mem, Kaf, Bet, Yud. Put it all together. Oh, this is outstanding. Jeremy's, he never misses a trick. You put them all together in order. M, K, B, E. Yeah. Put the vowels in and you've got Maccabee. And so, once upon a time, some of the great sages took notice of this and connected the experience of the miracles that is a part of our regular worship when we encounter miracles anew each and every time we pray Shirataya Micha Mocha and say what those words mean, which is, who is like you, God, working these wonders? And yet we think about Maccabees, and they're the ones who made that extraordinary miracle take place, defeating all of the Hellenism that was threatening to squelch out, to really snuff out Jewish life, such that the temple had been desecrated and there was no prospect for continuing Jewish life. They, with the inspiration of God, worked a miracle. It is a partnership. We are, in fact, messengers of the miracles. It is not a matter of sitting back and watching them take place. We must partner with our God in being a source, in fact, be the presence of God in creating the miracles. And so, Mem, Kaf, Bet, Yud, Micha, Mocha, Ba'elim, Adonai, the Maccabees, those human miracle workers, are embedded in that very sentence. Who could be like you, God? The Maccabees, us, Micha Mocha, page 40. Yai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, Micha Mocha Ba'elim Adonai, Micha Mocha Nedar B'Kodesh Nora Tehillah Oseh Thaleh Nora Tehillah Oseh Thaleh Yai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai. Bottom right-hand corner of the supplemental page, you'll find the words for our nighttime prayer. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom, L'shalom, V'ha'amidenu Malkeinu L'chaim. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Amen. Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai, guard us from all harmful things. O Adonai, keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. 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 The Amidah begins on page 46. If you're able, I invite you to stand at this time. Adonai Sfatai Tivta Adonai Sfatai Tivtach Ufi Yagid Tehillatech Ufi Yagid Tehillatech Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Achia v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim V'konei Hakol V'zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot U'mevi Geula Livnei V'nehem L'man Shemo B'hava Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah Ata Gibor Leolam Adonai Mechayei Kol Ata Rav Lehoshia Mashiva Ruach U'Morid Hagashem Michalkel Chaim Bechesed Mechayei Hakol Merachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Verofei Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Micha Mocha Baal Gevurot Umido Melach Melech Memit Umechayeh Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman Ata L'chayot Hakol Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayeh Hakol Ata Kadosh V'Shimcha Kadosh U'Kedoshim B'chol Yom Yahalelucha Selah Baruch Atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. The remaining brachot of the Amidah can be found through page 62. It's also, of course, an opportunity to spend some time communing with the prayers in your own heart as we spend this time in quiet prayer. You can remain standing or be seated whenever you're ready. page 62. Yihiu liratzon imrei fi vehegyon libi lefanecha Adonai Tzuri Adonai Tzuri V'goali Yihiu liratzon imrei fi v'hegyon libi lefanecha Adonai Tzuri Adonai Tzuri v'goali Yihiu liratzon imrei fi v'hegyon libi lefanecha Adonai Tzuri Tzuri v'goali Yehiu liratzon imrei fi v'hegyon libi lefanecha Adonai Tzuri Adonai Tzuri v'goali Tzuri v'goali So we're going to go back a ways, at least for me, to my final year serving my previous congregation. And since I've been at this congregation for 20 years, we're going back a ways. My first pulpit was in New York, in Scarsdale, New York, Westchester Reformed Temple. And I had 5 amazing years working as a part of an incredible team there with Rabbi Rick Jacobs, who many of you now know as the president of the Reform Movement. He was the senior rabbi that I went to work with there. There was a young rabbinic and cantorial student who worked with us pretty closely during that time too. Her name was Angela Warnick Bookdahl, and she has had a nice run in the rabbinate too. It's worked out okay for her. We were part of a very special team and enjoyed that extraordinary gift of collaborating with one another during those years. Now, during that last year that I was there in New York, I was invited to speak at the St. Pius X Parish, which was the Catholic church that was right down the street from our synagogue. Now, prior to that invitation, our temple had not really formed all that much of a relationship with St. Pius X. For the most part, they were to Westchester Reformed Temple in Scarsdale what the Getty Center is to Leo Beck Temple, namely a great place to park on the high holy days. But now they were seeking to open a relationship around learning and inviting me to teach about the religious meaning of Hanukkah. Religious meaning, I wondered. What other kind of meaning could there be? And so I asked them, and they said, well, what we mean is that we're more interested in religious explanations than cultural ones. We're not looking for a lot of sociology or historical facts or moral reasoning. We want to know the theological underpinnings of the holiday. Oh, I replied, recognizing right then and then that they had obviously had a few Reform rabbis visit their church before me. They seemed already to have discovered that we Reform Jews tend to be a lot more comfortable inside our heads than inside our souls. Intellectual discourse, comfortable. Getting deeply spiritual, sometimes a little more alien. So I replied, I will do my best. But I got to be honest, I don't know how much theology I can find in Hanukkah. I wasn't trying to be difficult. Think about Hanukkah. We talked about this briefly before around Mi Chamocha. It's the story of the Maccabees, right? They took up arms to fight for their freedom, to live their Jewish lives, to rededicate their holy site, the ancient temple in Jerusalem, which had been desecrated by the pagans. And the closest analog for us today would have to be Israeli Independence Day, which is also not laden with much overt theology, is it? Ask a modern-day Chassid who lives in Israel, but who believes there shouldn't be in Israel until the Messiah comes to establish it. Ask him what he is celebrating on Hanukkah, and he will tell you that he is celebrating the many miracles that God worked for our ancestors and also for us. In fact, that's exactly what we were singing about when we made our second bracha for kindling all of these beautiful Hanukkah lights. But when it comes to the Maccabees, either the ancient ones that brought us Hanukkah or the more modern ones who enabled Jews to worship once again at the Western Wall. The Chassid would sooner wait for a Messiah to ensure his religious freedom than to fight to ensure it himself. So I was a bit stumped. The religious meaning of Hanukkah, the theological underpinnings, what might they be? Well, maybe we can find a few answers by looking at this week's Torah portion and the portions that surround it. This week we read the second of 4 Torah portions devoted to telling the famous Joseph story, famous at least after Andrew Lloyd Webber got through with it. It is one of the longest sustained narratives in the entire scroll, 14 chapters of riveting human drama. Some refer to chapters 37 through 50, the final 14 chapters in the book of Genesis, the Joseph chapters, as a novella, kind of a self-contained unit. So beautiful is the literary craft to call it a novella. But when you look at these chapters as literature, you discover pretty quickly that they're entirely different from the earlier narratives in the book of Genesis. That is to say, earlier in Genesis, you have no problem finding the theological underpinnings of the story. God is talking personally to practically everybody. God talks regularly to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, Joseph's father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. And they offer prayers to God, and they build altars to God, and one almost sacrificed his son to God. God makes covenants with them, makes promises to them, literally guides almost every important move in their lives. But when it comes to Joseph, God is practically absent, nowhere to be found, even though we can imagine how deeply Joseph must have wished for some sort of divine rescue from his brother's wrath, their near murder of him, their sale of him into slavery, his imprisonment in Egypt. But God never speaks directly with Joseph, as he did with the earlier men in his family. It would appear that Joseph has to function without divine guidance. His own intelligence and ingenuity will be all he has as he seeks to pull himself from the pits to the heights. For this reason, there are numerous scholars who look upon the Joseph story as a secular narrative. God's not there. And when you look at Joseph, you kind of see the sort of person who reminds you, quite frankly, of the most blindly ambitious secular people you know. He's driven, he's endlessly determined, he is astonishingly self-absorbed and self-impressed. Remember, this is a guy who dreamed that his whole family would literally come to bow down in his direction. And he actually told his older brothers about this. Questionable choice, one would assume. But while Joseph might be lacking some survival instincts to protect himself from his brothers, he's certainly not lacking for self-confidence. He possesses some serious visions of grandeur, and nothing is going to discourage him from seeing those visions realized. It's the kind of thing that enables, say, a young kid with a nice voice to become an international superstar, right? Absolute belief in the destiny for greatness. And this ambition of his actually does ultimately drive him all the way to the top, right? From the Egyptian dungeon to second in command to Pharaoh in Egypt. It looks like a story whose moral is in no way theological. It seems to be about believing in yourself, not believing in God. And it's a story that's got sex, power, money, social climbing, revenge, disaster. No wonder Andrew Lloyd Webber made a stage show out of it. It is not a theological tale, it's an episode of General Hospital. And it is not much different from the Hanukkah story. On the face of it, Hanukkah didn't have much to do with God either. It's more human drama. The story of Judah Maccabee and his companions, who didn't sit around waiting for a miracle to happen. They were going to be the miracle. They took on Antiochus IV and the Seleucid Greek army. They even battled their fellow Jews who had become Hellenized, assimilated, and were ready to toss Judaism away. But wait, you might be thinking, what about the miracle of the little cruse of oil that burned for 8 days instead of 1, right? Isn't that the miracle of Hanukkah worked by God? Well, I am generally not one who likes to do battle with the tooth fairy or Santa Claus, but the miracle of the oil first surfaced 664 years after the events of Hanukkah. Sorry. There are 4 books of the Maccabees, and none of them mention anything about a cruse of oil burning miraculously for 8 days. The first time we hear that story about the oil is in the Talmud, and there can be little mystery as to why the Talmudic rabbis created it. After all, they were as uncomfortable with the real Hanukkah story as many of us are about the most brutal episodes involved in the founding of the modern state of Israel. The rabbis of the Talmud were not anxious to see the Jews in their own time rise up against the Romans. They could ill afford any confidence that they too could overcome being badly outnumbered and win a heroic victory like the Maccabees did. And so they left us a story that would leave no doubt. God makes miracles, not Jewish warriors. In the Talmud, God would be the hero of Hanukkah, not the Maccabees. It was a total revision of Jewish history. And it does little to help us understand or even attempt to answer the question those nice folks at St. Pius X asked me about how God figured in the Maccabees' story of combating danger and fear. And that would be a helpful question for us to answer because the Maccabees weren't the only ones who faced danger and fear. We have our own dangers and fears to face, do we not? And our lives feel, for the most part, as secular as the biblical Josephs, as secular as Hanukkah's Maccabees. Where is God in the equation? Well, maybe Joseph can help us find an answer. It's not hard to follow the role that God plays in Joseph's vision of his life since there are so few indications to follow. But when you put them together, a message does begin to emerge. You see, in his youth, there's no sign of God at all in Joseph's life. He has his dreams, and he interprets them to foretell his greatness. No God required, just him. But following a self-obsessed road of ambition does not lead Joseph to the victories he imagines for himself. Quite the opposite, in fact. It drives his family away from him. It makes enemies of those who should love him most, and it lands him in the dungeon, literally. He has to survive the indignities and anxieties of fearing for his life, first at the hands of his brothers, and then at the hands of the Ishmaelites who purchased him as a slave. And he's forced to live the life of a servant in Potiphar's house. And we can imagine him thinking all of this over and considering how he arrived at where he is, how all of his extraordinary talents have failed to produce the greatness that he has always expected. And then something unanticipated happens. His opportunity appears. The boss's wife wants to sleep with him. He finally has something which can grant him a little power. And instead of sleeping his way to the top, he says no to Potiphar's wife. In fact, he says he can't do it because it's a sin against God. That's his justification. Suddenly, without warning, God has become his conscience, a questioning force to balance his ambitions. For the first time in his life, anything balancing his ambitions. Joseph, as we know, lands in prison because of his morality. Potiphar's spurned wife angrily sets him up to be jailed, and instead of seeing that result as the inspiration to go back to self-absorption, he sits in prison for many quiet and lonely hours, we have to imagine, and discovers an even clearer belief that God somehow resides at the center of his destiny. He continues to believe that he is fated for greatness, but no longer is he strictly a secular creature who sees his genius as belonging solely to him. Suddenly there is humility before his own talents. He attributes some of what he has to something greater than himself. Call it ability, call it opportunity, call it good fortune. Joseph calls it God. So when he's called upon by the servants of the Egyptian Pharaoh, and later by the Pharaoh himself, to interpret dreams, an ability which he has perfect self-confidence in, Joseph carefully reminds his impressed listeners that only God can interpret dreams, even while he offers the correct interpretation time after time and rises as a result. At last, he has come to see something beyond himself involved in his own greatness. At last, there is a role for God. And so we're hardly surprised when, during this week's and next week's Torah portion, Joseph casts his reunion with his brothers, the reunion that enables the fledgling Israelite people to survive, as something destined to happen, and destined not by his own magnificence, but by God's. He saves his brother and his father. He saves the Jewish people. We don't see him dropping to his knees in triumphal prayer. We don't see him running off to build altars. We don't see him sacrificing his children. We just see a man of exceptional talent, one who seems quite secular, certainly by biblical standards. We see him learning to see something divine, something godlike in the miracles that he can create with his own capabilities. And with that, he discovers that he feels more responsible for creating them. So maybe there are some theological underpinnings to the Hanukkah story after all. Maybe the seemingly secular narrative the Maccabees lived was somehow also imbued with a sacred element. Call it ability, call it opportunity, call it good fortune, call it God. And so too might the seemingly secular narratives that we live be imbued with that sacred element, something godlike that can turn entitlement into gratitude, that can lead us to see our own accomplishments and bounty, not simply as evidence of our own greatness, but of a larger, wondrous greatness that we are incredibly fortunate to know, that makes our experiences of deep blessing possible. Might we summon the wisdom and the discipline to discover what Joseph discovered without having to languish in a frightful prison in a foreign land to do it. We may fail to see any evidence of God acting independently in our world. That's something hard for practically all of us to see or believe in. But might we begin to see evidence of God acting through us and through the sanctified actions of others who bring blessing into this world? Might there be something more to our greatness than just us? And might that perception inspire us to make of our own gifts something greater than we've ever been before? It doesn't require dropping to our knees in triumphal prayer, or running off to build altars, or sacrificing our children. No oil needs to burn miraculously for 8 days either. For we will not wait for God to intervene for us. Instead, let God intervene through us, and let us give thanks. Amen. Be the light inside the darkness, be the hope burning bright into the night, be the voice for those who cannot raise it, be the one who leads the way through the world's darkest days, be the light, be the light, be the light. When days feel long and all that's left inside you our darkest days, reach for the light to guide you. The miracle of change begins with sparks of light we find within that shine. If we come close together, we will see a people strong, a shared humanity, to transform darkness into light, to lead with love instead of might. We shine, we shine. Be the light inside the darkness, be the hope burning bright into the night, be the voice for those who cannot raise it, be the one who leads the way through the world's darkest days, be the light, be the light, be the light, be the light. There is a reason why our tradition calls upon us to pray Mishaberach when we're immersed in Torah. The reason we have a healing prayer embedded in our study of Torah is because Torah, we are taught by the sages in the Talmud, is oraita. That's the word they use to describe the Torah, which is the Aramaic word for light. The Torah itself is the light that we follow. And so, filled with light on this night, filled with that light, and that light, and this light, we wish to take some measure of that great good that is burning within us and bring it to those who need it the very most. It is once again that kind of light, that kind of love that we can give away, and it only grows larger, more vibrant by our giving it, by our bringing it. And so in a moment we're going to pray the words of Mishaberach together in the middle of page 253. And I want to invite anyone who would wish to speak aloud the name of a person in your personal circle, family member, friend, co-worker, someone from school, or someone from the neighborhood, someone who you would like to include in our collective prayers for healing, strength, encouragement, and light on this Shabbat. To stand at this time when my eyes meet yours, you can speak those names aloud to our congregation. For all of them, for all of us, we join together in praying the words of Mishaberach, middle of page 253. Mishaberach avotenu mikol habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mikol habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Aleinu can be found at the bottom of page 282. If you're able, please rise. Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon HaKol, v'ateit gdula le'otzeh b'reshit, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך
Malachei Hamlachim Hakadosh Baruch Hu.
Page 287.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד ושמו אחד.
Musical meditation to help prepare us for the recitation of Kaddish. The words can be found in the prayer book on page 291, bottom of 291. There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light. Long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. Though the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember. We remember. As we prepare to recite the Kaddish this evening, we remember especially Howard Axelrod, our congregation's founding rabbi, Leonard I. Bierman, Martha Fetchheimer Bierman, Francis Schwartz Blumenthal, Bernard Brode, Kathleen Sawyer Crocker, Stephen Feig, Fred Halpern, Joyce Halper, Alex B. Hamburg, Babs Hamburg, Margaret Fetchheimer Hyman, Edith Herskovitz, Marcia Howard, Shirley Begovich Hike, Leslie Levin, Beatrice C. Levy, Monty Livingston, Barbara Lurie, Robert G. Mann, Samuel Marks, Lynn Miller, Marion Adams Moffat, Boris Bud Ratner, Bert Rosenberg, David Rosenthal, Ann Sawyer, Bert Shore, Max Shore, Craig Watson, Morton Weinberg, Alfred Wittert. Are there other names we should include? If so, please speak them aloud. We think as well of all of those who we name in our hearts, also those who have perished as innocent victims of violence in a world that we must guide to peace. Holding them all close at heart, we say, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, the memory of the righteous is an everlasting blessing. As together we give thanks for the blessing of life with the words of Mourner's Kaddish found on page 294. If you're able, please rise. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חילותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירם בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו amen. May the giver of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved among us, and let us together say amen. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו amen. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 ya la la, ya la 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 ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 ya la la, ya la 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 ya la la, vehimru amen. Shabbat Shalom, Chag Urim Sameach. Enjoy those last couple of nights of Hanukkah. Shabbat Shalom. Here. It's a better night when the Raps are in the house. Glad you were here to do some remembering with us. Hey, Bob. How's it going, bud? You guys doing any traveling during the break? Yeah, a little skiing coming. That is awesome. How long have you been here? Have fun. Everybody skis? You snowboard. Everybody. Outlier of the travel.